Order, order. I call Olivia Blake to move the motion.
Thank you, Chair, and it's a pleasure to serve under your chairship, Mr Betts. On the 9th of October last year, smoke, ash and pollution engulfed Sheffield Hallam constituency and beyond. A great many people contacted me on that day and afterwards to complain about the air quality, which was 4 times over the legal limit on air pollution. It was a relatively still day, which meant the smoke took a while to dissipate, and the unique topography of my constituency meant that constituents were very much affected. Constituents contacted me to say that they had trouble breathing and that it had caused coughing and irritation to eyes. It was particularly distressing for those members of my community with respiratory conditions. The reason for the smoke was heather burning on the moorlands to the west of Sheffield. Natural England, who are investigating the burns, tell me that the moorland estates located within SSSIs close to Sheffield usually have agro-environment higher level stewardship agreements that contain burning plans. And I'm not going to comment on the specifics of this burn because we don't know whether it was legal or not. But it is entirely possible that it was legal, despite the rocketing pollution levels and the damage affecting many in my community. On the impacts of the burning, Chair, I've started with this anecdote because the fact is that this could be perfectly lawful behaviour, and that highlights some of the problems with the regulations that we currently have in place. Burns such as these take place in my constituency, often with similar effects, if not quite so dramatic. They're a regular occurrence. The immediate impact on air quality is an obvious one, but the burning is also undermining our ability to address the twin climate and nature crises that we're seeing, damaging the precious blanket peat bog habitats that would otherwise exist without them. The UK holds 13%. Yep, I'll take an intervention.
First of all, can I commend Olivia for bringing this forward, Mr. Chairman? This is a subject matter I think that she and I probably hold very much in importance, although we might have slightly different opinions in relation to what's happening. Does the Honourable Lady agree? I think she does, but I just want to have this on record. Does the Honourable Lady agree with me that there are those who own the moors or those who manage the moors, manage them or try to manage them in a very environmentally sensitive way, and as such the burning of the moors are part of what happens for the purposes of shooting on the moors, and the Honourable Lady will know that when you burn the peat, it helps to regenerate the next season that comes through for the birds to be able to hold them. So does the Honourable Lady agree that it's important to recognise all the different factors that are important for the moor? And does the Honourable Lady agree as well, perhaps, that has there been any engagement with those who manage or own the moors to find a way of doing this that doesn't, by its very nature, cause any inconvenience to others?
I think that's a very good point. And yes, I have been out to more different moorland owners in my constituency and beyond, actually, to see regenerative projects of, for example, of sphagnum moss planting or plugs or different things that people are doing to try and improve the quality of the moors. But I still think that this is an issue that needs further government intervention, because I think that the immediate impact is quite obvious, but also the long-term impact is one that should concern us all. Because as I was just about to go on to, I think that we also have to make sure that we're taking into consideration the climate and nature crises, as well as the health implications of such burning, which is damaging the precious blanket bogs that we have. The peatlands are so important, and we have 13% of the Earth's blanket peat bog in the UK, which is the largest proportion in the world, and it's essentially our rainforests. And I'm proud to represent a constituency which includes some of that landscape. Unfortunately, we know, and I've seen this firsthand, that the vast proportion of our peatlands are in a degraded state, and the difference between a degraded peatland and one that is in good health is hard to find, to see that comparison, because of the damage to so much of our peatlands. And part of that is due to this burning. Not only does that damage the ecosystem that supports an abundance of wildlife, it is also bad for the climate. In the natural and re-wetted state, peatlands have the potential to store CO2 on a large scale and can be a vital asset to helping us decarbonise our country. But when it is degraded, they do the exact opposite. The damage means that nationally, our peatlands at the moment emit the equivalent of amount of CO2 to 140,000 cars per year. The burns themselves release 260,000 tonnes of CO2 annually. The burning also makes the effects of the climate crisis worse. When the heather is burnt, the fire kills off the spongy sphagnum moss underneath, and the moss acts as a natural barrier to rain runoff. And it's essentially, one expert kind of described it to me as a Persian carpet. It's very absorbent, and if you take it in your hand, you can actually squeeze it. And if you go on a healthy bog and you jump up and down, someone will be able to feel that about 20 metres away, but because of the water that's held within it. That is a very rare thing to find in the UK at the moment. But that means that we often see down valley flooding, and that without this environment being protected and being restored, that is going to become more and more likely. And if we want to slow the flow, that is a good place for us to start, would be in maintaining that sphagnum moss and making sure that that is in a good condition to be able to do the job that it's evolved to do. Global heating means that our winters are getting wetter, and we're already beginning to see the effects of floods up and down the country. And rather than destroying natural flood defences, we need to protect them to ensure we mitigate the worst effects of the climate emergency. There are some who say that we need burning to control fuel loads on the moors, that without burning, overgrown heather would cause wildfires. But the more you burn, the more heather grows, and the more you get locked into a cycle of burning. Isn't it better to break that cycle by restoring the moorland monoculture back to its former health, re-wetting the peat, and introducing a more vibrant biodiversity that came before the burns, and in fact before drainage on many of our peatlands as well? That's why I was pleased in 2020 when the government announced it would be introducing stronger regulations to control the burns. In fact, the current licensing regime came shortly after a similar debate to this, which I was lucky enough to hold, in which the minister told me that this old system was clearly not protecting every blanket bog site. But when I read the details of the regulations in 2021, they left a lot to be desired. Licensing is only required on peatland of a depth of 40 centimetres or more. We don't have a map agreed nationally on that. And the Wildlife and Countryside Link have estimated that the current law therefore leaves around 60% of UK peatlands without any protection. 3 years later, it's useful to take stock to see if the new regulatory regime is working for the peatlands it does include. Unfortunately, data from the RSPB suggest it isn't. We're halfway through this burning season, so we don't have the full figures for this year. But during 2022 to 2023, there was 260 records of burning in that season in the English uplands, and these were reported to the RSPB via their dedicated app. 87% of these burns took place in special areas of conservation and special protected areas, and the RSPB believes that 72 of the 260 reported burns may have breached the regulations by taking place on protected areas of peat over 40 centimetres in depth. That's 28% of those that were reported to the RSPB. This year, before, the RSPB received 272 reports. 1 in 3 took place on peat likely to be deeper than 25 centimetres, and 4 out of 5 took place in SSSIs, special protected areas and special areas of conservation. And while the government issued no licences for burns in 2021, 70 reported burns took place on peat likely to be deeper than 40 centimetres in protected sites, violating the regulations. That's at least 142 burns that were likely to have been illegal in the last 2 years without considering the current season. In 2023, DEFRA successfully prosecuted 2 estate owners and issued a warning to a third. But that's only 3 cases, and the level of enforcement action isn't anywhere near the level of potential law breaking. These figures all show the new system clearly is not working, and that the law needs to go much further to stop this damaging practice rather than the partial prohibition that we've seen. It's high time that there is an outright ban, in my opinion. I raised this issue in the Chamber with the previous Secretary of State for Environment and Rural Affairs, and I'm sorry to say that not only did she tell me that she was not considering a ban, but that my constituents should be happy with the air quality they have. I hope new leadership in the department will prompt a less disappointing and less dismissive response, because it's important we get this issue right. Unfortunately, I don't think the government is getting it right or rising to the level of ambition required. The latest CCC report, a progress report on reducing UK emissions, says that restoration of peatlands is already significantly off track compared to the CCC's balanced pathway. In 2022 to 23, the overall rate of restoration of UK peatlands was a measly 12,700 hectares. While that's an increase on the previous year, to meet next year's target of 29,000 hectares will require more than a doubling of the current rate. Even if the government matches this target, the CCC recommend a UK-wide rate of 67,000 hectares per year by 2025. I know the Minister will point me to the Government's England Peatland Action Plan, but the truth is we're not meeting the targets that we need to, and we're seeing a failure of delivery in government policy on peatlands, but even worse, a failure of ambition. That needs to change, and change urgently. It's been my pleasure to go out onto the moors in my own constituency to see projects dedicated to re-wetting and restoring peatlands, and also around the country. Instead of burning, we need to see more projects like these, and for other degraded habitats too, supported by concerted government-led strategy to reverse the decline in nature that we are seeing. I know that the Minister lives very close to where I grew up, and quite recently we went for a family walk, and I was trying to show them some healthy sphagnum moss on the moorlands in the member's constituency, and it was very difficult to find some in good condition to show what I was talking about. And I think that shows that this is a wider issue than just my own constituency, where we do have a lot of burning happening. We know that the degradation of peatlands is of significant importance to communities up and down the country. And Chair, finally, in conclusion, heather burning is bad for the environment, bad for the climate crisis, and, as the recent burns in my own constituency have graphically illustrated, bad for the health of people in Sheffield and in Sheffield Hallam in particular. I hope the Minister will consider the complete ban on burns and offer a comprehensive, joined-up plan to restore these habitats. I'm proud to say that I have the support of our Mayor, Oliver Coppard, and the leader of Sheffield City Council, Tom Hunt, who have both been very outspoken on this issue and wanting to see a further ban, whilst we've been trying to contact certain landowners about this practice to make sure that we have a way of dealing with the needs of peatland owners, but also having that balance with local communities. I think that there is a lot to say, and I think it is important that local authorities also have the powers where air pollution levels are being breached to make sure that they have the powers in order to stop this happening and make sure that people's health is protected, as well as our environment, which is ultimately in the uplands so important for those who live downstream of us. Thank you.
The question is that this House has considered the regulation of heather burning on peatlands. Minister to respond.
Thank you, Mr Betson. It is a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship, and can I thank the honourable member for Sheffield Hallam for securing this important debate and giving me the opportunity to respond to some of the points that have been made. The United Kingdom boasts some of the world's most extensive peatlands, with nearly 3 million hectares of peatland area. This precious habitat is of huge national importance, and the honourable member quite rightly identifies that. These precious habitats are vital as we protect these sites for future generations. And this government's commitment to the protection and restoration of these habitats achieves several environmental benefits, including cutting carbon emissions, optimising biodiversity, minimising wildlife hazards and improving water and air quality. And I want to just dive straight in by referring to some of the regulations that the Honourable Member for Sheffield Hallam has referred to. Because on the 16th of February 2021, the Government published new legislation, the Heather and Grass Burning England Regulations to Protect Blanket Bog Habitats in England. The regulations, which came into force in that May, were introduced to prevent burning on areas of peat of over 40 centimetres deep on special scientific areas, special scientific interest, SSIs, that are also have special protection areas, a designation of that, or special areas of conservation, except under licence. And the regulations were seen as a game changer in terms of trying to bring out better protection for peat bog areas. And this limited the practice of burning on protected blanket bog, except under licence, for reasons such as wildfire mitigation or to support peatland restoration. The regulations are a crucial step forward in meeting the government's nature and climate change mitigation and adaptation targets, including the legally binding commitment to reach net zero carbon emissions. Data held from the moorland change map suggests a decline in burning, cutting on moorland areas since the introduction of these regulations in 2021 on these areas. And where there is an allegation of breach of these regulations, DEFRA, supported by Natural England, have been swift to act in bringing forward 2 successful prosecutions just last year. The low numbers in the alleged offences and successful prosecutions show that compliance with the regulations is high and that stakeholders have been receptive to the regulations, these new regulations being put in place. However, the fact remains that burning can be the right tool in certain circumstances to carry out better mitigation measures and better management measures of heather. And these regulations were designed to strike the right balance between protecting our habitats from harm and ensuring that our landowners and land managers have the right tools available to them to better protect and restore and manage heather moorland. Because we also need to be minded about wildfire mitigation, human safety, conservation, enhancing the management of our natural environment as well. Or, of course, because of the specified vegetation is effectively inaccessible to other means of managing heather growth that can be done through more mechanical means, just simply given the topography of the moorland. So therefore, there has to be a range of measures, including burning, that the regulations give a land manager the possibility of seeking an exemption to pursue. And I just want to declare, just want to go into a little bit deeper around these regulations, because of course they were brought out specifically with the means to better enhance blanket bogs, to protect these valuable landscapes that we all care so deeply about. So for an applicant to be granted a licence under the 2021 regulations, they must demonstrate that they have at least tried or considered alternative methods of land management to burning, and explain why burning why other measures may not be possible. They must also set out how they intend to move forward and manage land away from burning for future management purposes, ideally towards peatland restoration. And I'm happy to.
Act of last resort, it'd be interesting to know those figures, and also given the statistics that I kind of highlighted about the number of burns that are still continuing in areas of special scientific interest and protected landscapes, whether or not this is actually meeting the needs of those areas to make sure that the protections are there.
And I thank the Honourable Member for her intervention. Of course, these regulations specifically relate to areas of SSSI with the additional protection measures that have been put in place. And the majority of licence applications received to burn under the 2021 regulations are for the purpose of reducing the risk of wildfire. With regards to the specific detail, I'm more than happy to write to her on the number of applications that have been received. Although not all of these applications are progressed to a licence being granted, and I'm sure that you will agree that having the tools available to mitigate the risks is crucial in the protection of our landscape, habitats and communities, because as the Honourable Member rightly points out, living in a constituency that has moorland myself, and there recently being a fire right up going several years back, right up to the boundaries of Ilkley, it is important that all means of managing habitat is available. DEFRA also funds a training programme designed to consolidate knowledge, skills and understanding of vegetation fires, including wildfire incidents and prescribed fire operations. The aims of this is to support landowners and land managers to manage their land in a way that reduces the risk from wildfire, with the expectation that it will reduce the need to burn for this purpose. And since the development of the 2021 regulations, more than 1,000 LANTRA accredited training modules have been completed by both the public and private land managers. Restoring peatlands to favourable condition will go a long way to reducing the need to burn heather on land, as healthy blanket bogs pose a much lower risk to wildfire due to being wetter and having a lower fuel load. But what we must not forget that it is important that all options are available for a land manager to explore, because when heather continues to grow for many years, it is a heavy woody stock which poses its own fire risk in itself, and therefore by having a specified burning management plan that is associated with many agri-environmental stewardship agreements that is granted via Natural England, it is important that not only those burning management plans are adhered to, but that relationship is established with Natural England and the land manager to be able to manage our peatlands as successful as we can to reduce those risks with wildfire. And we are ramping up to current levels of peatland restoration through the Nature for Climate Fund, which is providing funding for the restoration of at least 35,000 hectares of peatland by 2025. A restoration grant scheme delivered by Natural England has already financially committed to restoring approximately 27,000 hectares of peatland, in addition to the restoration being delivered through the Countryside Stewardship and other government schemes. DEFRA has also committed, through the third National Adaptation Programme published in July of last year, to keep the case for extended protections against burning on peat under review. And I just want to pick up on some of the points that the Honourable Member made with reference to flooding and some of the peat restoration partnerships that are in place. So the peat restoration partnership have proved highly effective and are an example of stakeholders working together to restore peatland. In the north of England alone, over 45 or almost 45,000 acres of moorland have been repaired and revegetated. And I'm aware that in the North Pennines, work to block agricultural drains through the agri-environmental stewardship schemes and a land manager working closely with Natural England has resulted in the North Pennines area of outstanding natural beauty peatland programme being awarded a climate change award at the Durham Environmental Awards previously back in 2015. And a Natural England evidence review into the effects of managed burning on upland peatland biodiversity, carbon and water review concluded that there was no evidence that was identified specifically relating to the evidence of burning on watercourse, watercourse flow or the risk of downstream flood events. So I just want to highlight that whilst Natural England have carried out that review, there will be continued monitoring that takes place. And I also want to pick up on the visit that the Honourable Lady made to my constituency. I'm not quite sure which moor that she went and had a walk across. But if it was Ilkley Moor, she may be, which I think she's nodding to accept that it was, she may be aware or not aware that that is owned by, as far as I understand, by the local authority, by Bradford Council, of which no burning has taken place for a significant number of years. So the fact that she couldn't find any sphagnum moss on a moor that had no burning on for a significant period of time, I'm not sure quite helps the case that she's wanting to make, because in my own constituency I've also visited Keighley Moor, which is not owned by Bradford Council but does have a management programme in place. I've seen abundance of sphagnum moss on Keighley Moor, which is managed through various means. I just want to pick up on some of the points that she's made specifically to her own constituency. The Honourable Member will be aware of the work that Sheffield City Council are doing to promote sustainable land management practices in the Peat District to reduce burning in these areas with the aim to improving air quality. Poor air quality is the greatest environmental threat to human health, as we will all agree, and as a government we recognise the need to drive down air pollution and its impacts on human health and the environment. That is why we have set up 2 stretching new targets for fine particulate matter, the pollutant most harmful to human health under the Environment Act 2021. Our dual target approach will ensure reductions where concentrations are highest, as well as reducing average exposure across the country by over a third by 2040 compared to 2018, making a significant contribution to improving public health. We need to drive down emissions across all sectors in order to achieve our targets, and we have set out a comprehensive and wide-ranging action plan that we are taking to clean up our air in the Environmental Improvement Plan, which came into effect last year. This includes improving our regulatory framework for industry to drive innovation and tackle our air quality and our net zero goals going hand in hand. And the continued support to local authorities, including through our £883 million NO2 programme, will certainly help with that. This has included funding for the Honourable Member's constituency to support the delivery of the Sheffield Clean Air Zone and other measures to tackle NO2 exceedances. And I recognise that air quality impacts on, from moorland burning will be a concern to the Honourable Member for the reasons that she's brought this debate to the House. But I also want to reiterate that moorland management has got to consider all options, and the regulations that we brought into place in 2021 has been well received by many stakeholders who engaged with that process, and I think that we have reached a balance that can be well received by all. I just want to obviously allow the Honourable Member to respond. Okay, fine. Well, I will continue with a little point. I want to make sure that I was doing it all correctly in this Westminster Hall debate. I just want to also say that I am happy to commit to the Honourable Member that we'll be exploring adding particulate matter and other air pollutant emissions from moorland practices to our national atmospheric emissions inventory, and that work is being currently explored by the teams at DEFRA, and we will continue to look at additional evidence that is put forward to us. I hope that this provides, particularly with referring to the regulations that came into play in 2021, some reassurance to the Honourable Member that the Government is taking this matter incredibly seriously, along with the £883 million that we've given to local authorities, including her own local authority, to roll out and assist with the Clean Air Zone in Sheffield. But just to summarise and finish off, I thank the Honourable Member for securing this debate and raising her issues today.
This House has considered the regulation of heather burning on peatlands. Many of that opinion say aye. The contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Order, order. The sitting is suspended until 2:30 p.m.